we have something that's unique where I there are a lot of similar varieties being grown throughout the state that are, like you see Cabernet Franc, you see, there at one point in time there really was a lot of Chambourcin, and I think there still is a good amount of that variety. But we have this experimental aspect about our state that there are people growing different varieties that are not necessarily considered typical.
So welcome everybody to this episode of Wine Across America. We are thrilled to be joined by two esteemed Maryland winemakers today. So Melissa Aellen from Linganore and Simple Theory, and Rachel Lipman from Loew. So Melissa and Rachel, thanks so much for joining Sandra and me. We're really excited to kind of get into a conversation about your wineries, your wines, Maryland in general, and kind of what you see happening in your market. So thanks for joining us.
Why don't we start by just
Certainly.
telling us, Melissa, we'll start with you. How did you get into this?
I was born into this.
I love it. You had no choice.
Yeah, basically voluntold. So I started working here at Linganore when I was about 7 years old. My grandparents started the winery almost 50 years ago, or 48 years this year. My grandmother's Italian, my grandfather's German Swiss. So growing up, they just always made wine in their cellar, and moved onto the farm in 72 and opened the winery in 76. And I started working here, like I said, I was 7, and set my goals on becoming a winemaker, and have finished up schooling, and went and got my degrees in viticulture and enology.
Wow.
And then I worked in 6 different wineries, and then moved back here full time in 2017. I've been back here, 8 years now.
Yeah. What that? Oh my gosh, Rachel, you do you have any choice in this, or what? Or was it your passion?
I was born into it also. So yeah, the interesting thing, Melissa and I we're young, but we also have the family generational businesses in terms of winemaking in the state of Maryland. So yeah, my grandparents started the winery here in Maryland in 1982. So we're about 3 miles away from Linganore. But yeah, we started in 1982. My grandfather's history, however, actually goes back to the mid 1800s in producing honey wine. So basically a fermented beverage made with honey, but they made in all different facets in Lwów, Poland, which we now know as Lviv, Ukraine. And I got into it, really, having these fond memories of going to wine festivals, of getting to work with my grandfather, ever since I was probably 12. And so since then, it was just kind of one of those things where I knew the winery was going to be my life somehow, but I didn't know that I could have it as a career until I started going to college. And then I have a degree in plant science and communications. That was my compromise with my mom. I'm not really always allowed to say that part, but yeah. And then I worked on all aspects of the industry, from distributing to, berry pathology labs. I have a winemaking certification from Washington State, and then distributors, and started working with my family full-time. I was working on a part-time basis, but now full-time since November of 2018, when I started kind of taking things a little bit more over in some aspects.
So I love the theme of family. Sandra and I are family friends. That's how we know each other. And you guys, I had the pleasure of meeting you both several months ago in person, and we all had lunch together, and it's great that you're friends, but both of your families, as you've just described, sort of brought you into this business. I think it's interesting, Rachel, that you waited till you were 12, given the fact that Melissa started when she was 7. I mean, you're kind of late to the game, But
look, I mean, I was sampling wine young, but I was allowed to touch chemistry tools when I was 12. So that's we all have our roles.
I do think it would be important to share a little bit about your family's history and your grandfather's in particular. If you're up for talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my grandfather, his birth name was Loew. He was born in Lwów, Poland, which is now known as Lviv, Ukraine, in 1925. My grandfather and my family were Jewish. And so my grandfather, he was born into this very large family. There was over 80 people strong up until really 1938, 1939. And he was in this area in Lviv, which also, depending on the jurisdiction and what you were leaning towards, it was Lemberg. And they owned these massive honey wineries. They were such large businesses, they essentially took up the entire blocks in the city of Lviv. So they owned over 5 of them until the start of 1939. When the war started and the Soviets came in, they were all destroyed. The deeds were taken, everything was taken, and then eventually including the people. So if you can think about the area where my grandfather was from, he was born in, and there was a Jewish population there up until 1939 of really 200,000 Jews. And my grandfather was essentially the only survivor of his own family, but he was really one of 800 survivors to have survived from that, who were Jewish from that city. Mm. So that is a survival rate of 0.2%. So it makes sense that he was really the only one to have really survived out of his family. And he had this really, like, this haunting out of this sweet smell of mead fermenting in barrels. So when he came to the United States after he had survived the Holocaust, he survived Auschwitz, death marches, concentration camps, political prisons, and many other things. But when he came to the United States and was an electrical engineer, he had this haunting. And so, you know, he was making wine and making mead, not in a commercial basis, and on the side. And then eventually, when he was ready to retire, he and my grandmother, he kind of roped her into it a bit. And she was more of the business mindset, and he was just wanting to reconnect the history. They bought land in Maryland in 1982 after having a successful life and a family and everything, and then built the property here. And it's really just been a tribute to the family's history and the roots, and being able to, and now for me to be able to bring that memory a lot to life, and to then share the story in a unique way through the products.
Thank you. Thank you for
That's
sharing.
amazing.
It is an amazing story. And Melissa, I was fortunate enough to meet your dad when I
Mhm.
visited Linganore, and he was a colorful character.
He is, yeah.
He had just come in. I guess you guys had an event the weekend before, and he had been working on cleaning things up and all that. And
Mhm.
he's like, listen, this is who I am, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what has that been like for you? You know, working right alongside members of your family, you know, really since, as you said, since you were 7.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very unique experience. When I worked at the other wineries, they ranged from New York, where I went to school, to Illinois, to Oregon and Napa, Indiana for a bit, New Zealand. So I was all over the place. And a lot of wineries are family-run wineries, right? And so I grew up in it, but you don't really understand what it's like to work with your family until you do it. So even as like an employee for someone else's family-owned business, and like growing up, it's a little different because you're not obviously trying to call the shots or anything. You're just doing what's being told. You're still rookie, right? Still super green. But it's very, very rewarding most of the time. You know, it's one of those things. It's a blast, and these people that you've known that have known you your entire life. And to be able to see you grow and develop, and to see how they're changing. And right now, my dad and my uncle, who are running the business, are getting closer to retirement, and like talking about what that looks like, and you know how succession planning works, and seeing them, you know, take on the joys of what they've done their entire lives, and picking just those pieces that they still, you know, really passionate in. And then, you know, I'm able to come in and take everything else. And so, you know, the last part of their working, you know, career, they're just doing the parts that they, you know, particularly love to do. So very, very rewarding. And also it's your family. So when you know the buttons to push, you know them better than anybody else. If you've got siblings, you'd certainly know what that's like. So you know exactly how to get underneath someone's nails and like really, really irritate them, and they're just gonna make their skin, I guess. And yeah, so that there's definitely that side of it too. Normally that wouldn't happen in a corporate workplace quite the same way.
That's great.
I can second that.
Well, I love that you're
Melissa
both
and I
young
talk about
women.
that.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys must collaborate a lot.
Yeah.
I can tell. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
it. But I love that you're both young women in this business, and particularly in a burgeoning, growing area that a lot of people don't think of. People do not think of Maryland in that area and think of wine. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. We want people to know that there's beautiful wines being made all over the country,
Yeah.
and to come and see them and come and reach out and come and taste them.
So,
Yeah.
what can you both share about, for the sake of our listeners, about, Maryland as a wine producing state, your particular area? As Rachel said, you guys are real close by, a few miles away from each other, but I think it would be really interesting to kind of get into what makes Maryland the unique, wine producing state that it is.
So Maryland, we're like we're like what most people think of as like we're like a mini America in many aspects. I mean, we have a very diverse climate throughout, from the Eastern Shore to Western Maryland, rolling hills, which is very good for growing grapes. And we're a very young industry. I mean, like most of the wineries are well under 20 years old in the majority of our state for wineries. I mean, I think that Melissa and I were outliers, even though we're so young. Our wineries are quite older, and in terms of just like on the average age. And I think that there's a lot of really high quality wine being grown here and being made here. And I think that that's something that we have that's unique. That we have very populated areas where the DMV area, we have a lot of wineries that are in people's backyards, and we have something that's unique where there are a lot of similar varieties being grown throughout the state that are, like you see Cabernet Franc, you see, there at one point in time, there really was a lot of Chambourcin, and I think there still is a good amount of that variety, but we have this experimental aspect about our state, that there are people growing different varieties that are not necessarily considered typical. Not like what you see in like Napa Valley, where you're expecting Chardonnay, Cab Sauv, Pinot Noir. Here, like you see things like Melissa has Saperavi. I've been working with Muscat Canelli. I'm working with Chenin Blanc. Like we have these other producers that are working with Gruner Veltliner, and Barbera, and all these different varieties that are not necessarily considered like indicative to our state. But I think what's indicative is that we are so versatile.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to say that. We've got what I think one of my favorite things about Maryland is right now is that because we've been growing so quickly. So for example, like Rachel was saying, this, most of our wineries are under 20 years old. 20 years ago, there were 12 wineries in the state, and now there's over 100. Wow. Right. So we don't mean we don't mean like 51%. We mean like 85% of the wineries are, within the last 20 years. And with that and the experimentation, there's a little bit of a push from either members of the industry or adjacent to the industry, like, oh, Maryland needs to find its grape. What is Maryland going to be known for? What is Maryland state grape? They've got Virginia, you could argue Viognier, which they've kind of marketed for themselves. You've got Riesling out of New York, and as Rachel was saying, California, you got Oregon, Washington. You're like, oh, if you go to Oregon and there's no Pinot Noir at a winery, you're like, well, what are you doing making wine in Oregon, right? And I really appreciate that we're not there. And I don't know if we'll ever get there. I think our climate has changed so much in ways that excite and are unexpected to people. Like, we can grow grapes now that my family tried to grow 30 years ago and couldn't. We didn't have the right growing conditions. Our growing season was too short. Our winters were too harsh and cold. We would lose vines to winter kill. And we just didn't have the length to ripen. And now, we're easily growing, 30 years ago, we were growing a hybrid called Chardonnay, and now we grow Chardonnay. We couldn't ripen Cabernet Sauvignon, and now it's one of our most reliable grapes. So as, there's just been so much change. And with that, I don't expect it to never stop changing. And, so there's the potential to just pick the idea about just picking one variety seems like putting all your, I'm really bad at saying sometimes, like eggs in one basket, right?
Yeah.
Like
about what time did you find that you made this decision to switch to say Cab and Chard from these other more esoteric varietals? When did that happen for you all?
I think we tried starting to plant again about 15 years ago, some of those to see. And the first couple of years, it was a little rough. We were probably at like a ripening, like 6 out of 10 years. It felt like, I would say with Cab Sauv now, we're probably at like 8 to 9 out of 10 years, that we have a really good crop of it. Cab Sauv's a weird one. For our site specifically, it's really ripens very well for us. There are many other sites in Maryland where Cab Franc is the one that ripens better, and Cab Sauv usually struggles a little bit more. But we have the exact opposite, specifically on our site. But we realize that's kind of an anomaly for the state.
So speaking of changing climate and all that, how has this growing season been in both of your opinions?
It's interesting. I think last year was what we would consider like iconic in many aspects, because like we had less rain than like California growing regions had, basically. I mean, we had a California like summer, and really hot temperatures. The colors were insane. The flavors were amazing. This year we started out, I feel like, that way. And then it really was kind of on track for that up until like 2.5 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago. My length of time, my like concept of time is not fantastic.
It was like the beginning of August. Was
it really? Yeah.
That tropical, we had that tropical depression come through. We got 9 inches of rain in the first 9 days of August.
Oh my.
Yeah. And
yeah, I thought that was 2 weeks ago for some reason, but yeah, because anyway, August. Anyway, sorry.
And like, so like once that happened, I was, on point with Rachel, like, this is going to be another amazing year. And then we got the rain, and it's like, I would say at this point, average. Like, we'll see. If it dries out from here on out, I think our reds could still be on track to be amazing. Our whites are average. And we keep getting hit with these like random afternoon thunderstorms, which we usually have, but there's just really, this just seems like there's like a plethora of them this year, as opposed to like once or twice a week. It's like 3 or 4 days a week that there's just like a random storm that comes exactly when you don't want it to. So
wow.
So all of this talk has made us thirsty. Right. So
that's fair.
With your blessing, we thought we would actually do a little bit of tasting. So
we're gonna start with this, and I'm so excited because it's an Albarino.
Albarino, I'm gonna have some with you.
And wonderful. Why not? and I
wait, I'm jealous. Hold on a second.
Where's your
Let me grab a hold on. I'm jealous now.
Thank you.
And it's so exciting to see a variety. I mean, I'm such a big fan of Albarino, but that here in the United States that you're growing Albarino, what was the inspiration to go this way?
Yeah, so we've actually had Albarino in the ground here since 2015. So 2017 was our first vintage. This Albarino has been grown in the state, I would say, since 2024, for probably about 12 to 15 years. So I can't take credit for being the first to plant this by any stretch. But there were just wineries who wanted to give it a shot. And so they went through and planted Albarino. We did it slightly thereafter, and it's been a great one for us to work with. Maryland's a very interesting climate. Like, some years we're very similar to regions of Bordeaux. Other years you can find us more like Spain. So it's just, we're, a little bit all over the place, and how our climate works. So it's nice that we can be able to mess around with a whole bunch of different varietals. But Albarino is one of our favorites. We have about, let me think. I think we're like slightly under 2 acres planted right now. That might be a little wrong. Don't quote me on that one.
I find that a lot of people come to your vineyard, come to your tasting room, and they don't know what Albarino is.
I would say 80% probably don't know what Albarino is.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
But education.
Win them over.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very aromatic, and like, we love it. The 23, as Rachel said, was probably like one of the best years that we've ever had, if not actually the best year we ever had. And the alcohol, I mean, it was just, we were working California numbers out here. It was so strange. So it was a little different for us to be able to work with this wine because it was just running fermentation and acidity and alcohol different than we'd ever worked with before. So trying to find a balance where it didn't come off as too hot, which is not an issue we ever have. So, yeah.
So tell us a little bit, if you will, about Simple Theory and
Yeah, definitely.
label and sort of what it stands for.
Sure. So Simple Theory is adding on to the legacy that is Linganore. So like I said before, we've been around for about 50 years. My grandparents started it. Linganore overall, we have 49 wines that we produce. It's a lot of wines, but we're wine for all. We have dry wines, we have sweet wines, we have fruit wines, we have meads, we've got ports, we have whatever it is that you want to drink, we make it. And so we are really good at making sure that anyone who walks in the room or into our winery, there's a wine for them. And we can always find something to please your palate in the whole spectrum. And we've done a fantastic job at that. Like I said, my family started this, decades ago. We started as a dry wine winery in a very Baptist part of Maryland. Nobody here drank wine. The little old ladies would drink medicinal wines like dandelion and elderberry. So we started going down that path. And then people who did start to drink were people who enjoyed sweet wines. And so we then started up a sweet wine winery or sweet wine line to add to our dry wines. And the sweet wines in the mid 80s really kind of flew. And so we ran with it because if that's how you make money to put it bluntly, right?
Your audience.
Yeah, exactly. If that's what your audience wants, then you make that product. So we ran with it, and it's still a core aspect of what Linganore stands for today. And about a year and a half ago, we realized that it would make sense to give our dry wines, the ones that we, put a lot of time and effort into, and in a different way, not that we don't put time and effort into our sweet wines, but in a different way, we put a whole different set of skills into these dry wines to give them space to breathe on their own. And so we are launching this new brand. It's called Simple Theory Wine Co. And Simple Theory Wines is out of Frederick, Maryland. So we have a downtown tasting lounge, winery tasting lounge. It'll be opening here hopefully in the next month or so. I think contracting work literally is beginning right now. So we will hopefully be open not too long, but it'll be the inspiration behind the name just comes because we're just simple people. We just like wine. We want to take the barrier to entry and the pretension out of wine. That we feel like there are so many young people who don't drink wine because they feel like they don't know what glass to put it in or how to pair it or which wine do you pick off of the menu. So we're going to make it accessible and an educational, experiential tasting opportunity in downtown.
And thank you for that. Just one quick question on Simple Theory, price range, price points, sort of.
Sure. Yeah. So we're 28 to 49 for our initial launch.
Got it.
Yep.
And where can our listeners buy?
So nowhere quite yet, but in the next month or so, we'll have a live shop open on simpletheorywines.com.
Nice.
Thank you for sharing.
Congratulations.
Certainly.
Great.
Thank you.
So it's delicious. It actually sort of reminds me of a family trip to Spain many years
ago. Oh yeah. Okay.
We literally, knew nothing about Albarino before we got there, and all we drank for 2 weeks was lots and lots, and maybe too much lots of Albarino, and fell in love with it.
I'm leaving for Spain this weekend, so I can't wait.
Oh, exciting!
We do have two amazing sponsors for our program. We are going to start with our first little, very fast commercial break, and we're going to come back with the second wine with you, Rachel.
For Toomey, nothing is ever quite finished. It can always be evolved. Introducing the latest evolution of Toomey, the aluminum backpack and briefcase from the 19-degree aluminum collection. Toomey reimagined these everyday essentials in aircraft-grade aluminum with contours sculpted at precise 19-degree angles. Carry the aluminum backpack and briefcase from Toomey to perfect journeys near or far. Shop Toomey's full 19-degree aluminum in stores and online at toomey.com.
And we're back. Rachel, we're going to try your Cabernet from the Loew Vineyards, and it's called Wolf.
Yeah. Oh. Yes, it's named after my grandfather, actually.
Was that his nickname?
That was actually his birth name.
His birth name.
So his anglicized name when he came to the United States was William, and he was known. He actually, I mean, he had many names throughout his life because of nicknames in Poland, Yiddish names, and then also name and people used to come up to me and they would say, "Your grandfather made the best cab sauv I ever had in the state of Maryland," and so they like. So people would come up to me and say that, and then he passed away 2 years ago, so in 2022, and this is a 22 vintage. And it just so happened that it was the first time, you know, I thought that if I was going to make a wine that was in tribute and in honor of him, that it had to be Cabernet Sauvignon, because he made really beautiful ones. And my family, we still drink his old vintages. And someone called me about a month after he passed away and said that they would have some Cabernet Sauvignon. I didn't ask for it. Actually, it was just a random call. And he said that he would have Cabernet Sauvignon to sell me. And that was like, it felt like divine intervention. And it was just like fate. And so here it is. It's 100% Cabernet Sauvignon grown in Maryland and barrel aged for about 9 months. And it was a really beautiful vintage for that wine specifically. So it worked out very well.
Mm. Wow. This is beautiful.
It is.
What do you feel is like the highest comparison? Like you must be getting compared constantly. You know, you're in Maryland, you're growing a Cabernet. Cabernet is the most popular red wine in the United States. When people come in and talk to you, what do they say? Like, oh, I like it from here. I like it from here. You remind me of this, or you remind me of that. I mean, do you get a feel from people of where you're inspiring their palates from or to?
Do you mean in terms of this specific wine or in general?
Yeah, like with your specifically because everybody's familiar with Cabernet. Not everyone's familiar with Tempranillo or even Viogniers or anything like that. But everybody's familiar with Cabernet. Like it's such a bold. You have a great history of it, but it's such a bold wine to commit to because of the comparisons that you from all over the United States and all over the world. How do you describe your style that's unique? Because there's always going to be a unique accent or a unique take on the wine from the area it's from. So how do you describe the unique style of your Cabernet?
It's interesting. I mean, it's definitely not like California. I mean, it definitely has some fruit, but it's not like an inky, like super size me concept, like full bodied and like stay in your mouth kind of situation. And it's not really Bordeaux either because we're in the New World and it has some fruit. But it's interesting. I mean, I think my grandfather was Eastern European, and a lot of my influences from working in vineyards in France and working with a European, and spending a lot of time traveling to a lot of European wineries. I think there is kind of, I don't know, it kind of reminds me a little bit, if anything, there's some cab sauvs I had from Bulgaria, but it's kind of like an in between, I think. Mm-hmm. I mean, I usually tell people that my wines are going to have some spice that potentially that might remind them of Paso Robles, but there's going to be it's going to be leaner, so it's going to be more European in that sense, so you're going to have the integration of both old world meets new world in that aspect.
I like the word leaner that you use, because this definitely has like a leaner. I can almost taste a bit of tobacco, a bit of smoke. Like it's just like not so plush over the top fruit. It's really got like more of that leaner, spicier quality to it, which is really lovely.
Thank you. Yeah.
Rachel, we'll ask you the same question. Where can our listeners buy this Cabernet? Because
it's
delicious.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We don't have it in stores because it is on a higher price point. And we just actually, I think it was 2 weeks ago, released it to the public to purchase. Otherwise, it was just wine club only. So you can purchase it through our tasting room. either in person or online through loewvineyards.net on our shop tab. So, and it's a wine that can really age for quite a long time. I mean, I was even hesitant to even release it entirely because I feel like in 3 years from now, it's going to be even more beautiful. But I think that's another thing with Maryland wines is that we do actually have propensity to age. And I think that that's something that we'll start seeing probably more with like Melissa and my generation of winemakers, that we know what these wines are like 10 years from now, and then all of a sudden we'll get more of that interest for being collector items.
And you mentioned price point, but you didn't mention what that is.
Oh, 54.
Got it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Got
It's a high. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
I get that.
It's usually how we work. Yeah.
Do you
Ah.
do you discount it for friends and family to 36 then?
Nah.
And so you mentioned wine clubs, you both have wine clubs.
Yes.
Vineyards, which are so important to the health and the future wealthiness of your growth of your companies, because that's what you are. You're really small family businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Wine club. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I always encourage people. I'm like, if you like something, join the wine club. Join the wine club. It's like they need you. It's so important to your business.
Wine clubs are the best. I think one of the most important probably the most important way of having guaranteed revenue for wineries. One of the most important ways, and it's actually I think the most important way to continue to have relationships with your customers, because you have guaranteed customer retention. Assuming that they stick around through more than just 1 year or just a couple allocations. But yeah, it's really important. I think that for us, that was a big game changer once we added a wine club, to be able to start seeing customers, like instead of once a year or every 3 months, like seeing them every weekend or like once a month, and like knowing their names and getting to be able to help them tailor their orders and stuff like that. So, and then they're advocates of us too. So
Absolutely.
it's marketing too.
So we've seen a lot of success for wineries that we're working with in sort of making the wine club structure a little bit more member friendly, a little bit more choice, particularly among younger members. You guys getting any sense of that from your members, that they want some flexibility in that relationship, or you kind of following a standard sort of tried and true model?
So we've always offered customization for our club. So you can join our club. The winemaking team, Ray and I will pick 3 bottles for the release. And then if you want 3 bottles that are your own, then go ahead and change it. It's up to you. But Simple Theory will be launching both a wine club and also a subscription option. So if you would like, you want the same 2 wines, or for merely an AI generated selection based on your preferences to show up at your door every 4 weeks, then that's an option as well. So the subscription model is really popular with younger consumers. The club is not too dissimilar from a subscription, but not as frequent typically, and usually has a little bit more of a higher price point to buy in.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah. All right. So what are we going to try
We're
now?
going to move on.
This is by the way, this is like the best job ever. Okay.
Moving on to the Simple Theory Barbera, which again, so excited to see a different kind of varietal here in the United States. You don't see Barberas everywhere.
No.
And when did you start with the Barberas? About the same time as the Albareños? And
yes, I think we planted the Barbera in 2016. We had a vineyard site that had a vineyard on it for over 20 years. And it unfortunately got the tomato ring spot virus, which, although the name sounds like it's about tomatoes, it's not only tomatoes. So we had to rip the entire vineyard out. And when we did that, we had the option of replanting it. And so we planted half of it, a little over half of it, with Barbera. So the Barbera went in 2016. Our first vintage was 2018. For any of your listeners who are in Maryland, they would know that 2018, if they remembered their weather, like you do when you're a winemaker, that we had 20 inches of rain more than we typically have. So,
we had
and most
another
of it,
winemaker call 2018, 2018.
yes, exactly. Try not to think about 2018. It's like we don't talk about it. So in 2018 was pretty rough. 2019, 2021, the vineyard just really wasn't producing. It was producing fruit, but it wasn't ripening evenly. It was really struggling. And our head winemaker, his name's Ray Mitchum. He's been with us now for about 10 years. And in 2022, we looked at Eric, my uncle, who's our vineyard manager, and we both said, we said, Eric, if you don't make these plants make fantastic grapes so we can make good wine out of them, then next year you're ripping the plants out. Like, we're not dealing with this low quality, mediocre quality grapes that the site was just producing. So it could just be site selection. Barbera could be great on a different part of the farm, but just not there. And so he went through that summer, despite we have about 80 acres under vine right now. And so he oversees a lot, a whole crew and 80 acres of vines. He took this 1 acre on personally and dropped the fruit down to 6 clusters per vine, which doesn't mean a lot unless I tell you that that's incredibly low.
Very low.
That anyone else who's in the industry would look and say, like, how would you ever make money on that?
Yeah.
It's an incredibly low amount of fruit per vine. But he dropped in 6 clusters per vine, and this is the wine that it made. And so now we're in this continuing streak of maybe not 6, maybe like 10 or 12, but paying a lot of attention to this block, and because that's what it needs in order to thrive. So,
what a beautiful food-friendly wine.
It is. It definitely is. Yeah.
Talk about that, if you will, a little bit. So we have a bottle of it, and I don't think Sandra and I have any plans on making dinner together tonight. But I may make some dinner here. What do you suggest? What's your sort of ideal food pairings for this?
Honestly, I love the acidity on it. That I think for East Coast reds, you do tend to have a little bit more acidity than our West Coast counterparts. But I love that the acidity is very, very structured. It's not just like right at the end, like what did I just try? And I think with that in my mind, I love like kind of more acidic reds with more acidic dishes. So because it's a red, I would recommend a like red tomato sauce based. And admittedly, I have been craving Italian food because my family is Italian, so I always crave Italian food. But I'm not going to say quite spaghetti and meatballs, but maybe like a nice ragu, even like a lamb ragu. I think would the gaminess of the lamb would couple well with the spice and fruit notes on the forward part of the palate here.
Yeah, but the acidity in this makes this a great food wine.
Most certainly.
I can see that. Absolutely. And the price point on the Barbera?
This one is at 49.
It's spectacular.
Yeah, it won a double gold in the Maryland Wine Masters competition back in April.
Congratulations.
So I'm very proud about that. Yeah,
wow, you should be.
As you should be. So we've got one more wine to taste.
But we have let's rinse out our glasses, and we'll do our very fast, quick second break, and we'll be right back to you because I can't wait to taste this last wine.
Venue Magazine is timely and timeless. Contemporary art and design, food and wine, architecture, motoring, yachting, music and film, and more. Find it all at venuemagazine.com.
And we're back with Rachel with our final wine, the Malbec. Very excited to try this. This is a 2022.
Thank you. So while Sandra's doing the pouring, which I appreciate muchly, Rachel, what can you tell us about the Malbec that we're about to taste?
It's funny. I have this Malbec, the 2022, I'm actually very, very proud of it. And it's funny to me because I have had a love-hate relationship with this variety since I started professionally tasting wine, more so in like 2007, the 2017 vintages from Argentina. And I feel I have like this theory where, and a lot of people in the wine industry, when you try Malbec, it's one of the hardest varieties to get in a blind tasting in many aspects. It's kind of like a chameleon, and I think part of it is because a lot of the Malbecs we see coming from Argentina at this point are really heavy bombs. They're like high alcohol, and they're much more fuller bodied. And I really love French wines personally. So what I decided to do was to work with this, because we work with this in such a way that Malbec has really thin skins, and I felt like there was really no way that, especially being East Coast, that I could make that wine to be full bodied. That I was going to treat it like one of my friends does in Cahors. So this is 90% Malbec, 7% Cabernet Franc, and 3% Petit Verdot. My personal rule of thumb, because the federal regulation is anything that's 75% and above can be considered a single varietal. My personal rule of thumb is 90% and above. If it says that, it's at least 90% of that one variety in the bottle of wine. It was actually funny to me because we put this into a competition called Texam, which is one of the hardest competitions in the United States, judged by sommeliers, wine writers, and masters of wine, held in Texas. And it was funny because when I entered that competition, I was thinking that this wine was going to do the worst because it's Malbec. I mean, it's going against Argentinian Malbecs, and everyone loves our Argentinian Malbecs. Well, it happened to beat out all of the other Malbecs in that competition.
Wow.
And got a double gold and a judge's selection. Got a gold medal and a judge's selection. And it beat out the $125 bottles of Malbec from Argentina, which I think is pretty wild. Yeah. And so
you
it was funny because
to this was more of a French approach to the Malbec.
Yeah, not to have it, macerated on skins for too long, to be able to work with it. I mean, the thing is, the way that I see that Malbec as a variety, when you work with that variety, when you're in the vineyard and then into a winery, as soon as you snip the cluster off the vine with the clippers into a lug, into a container, as soon as you do that, the grapes start to deteriorate. They have really, really thin skins. And there's a term in the industry called juicing with that variety. And as soon as I saw that, I first started working with Malbec in 2020. And I had, I'd only ever tasted Malbec. I never worked with it before. My family never worked with it here. And as soon as I started working with that variety and I saw that happen, I was like, there's no way. I mean, it's like the skins are so thin, but it still produces really massive tannin. So, and it's all Maryland grown. And so that's kind of how I decided to treat it. And it's worked really well for us in that sense. I mean, it has beautiful color. It's really loosened up itself in the past, 8-9 months since bottling it. And yeah, I mean, it's just funny to me because I always have a plan of working with Malbec, whether it's for blending, which is typically what you see. You don't always see it as a single varietal on the East Coast. And I actually had planned on taking it out of the program, but keeping it in for blending and for rosé, because I was trying to condense my program a bit and not make like 17 wines in 1,400 square feet. It makes no sense to do that. So I was trying to take one out, and clearly I can't. So it's staying in the program. And it's, it's something that I've had to come around to really, not that I've had to come around to enjoy it and to like it, but to come around with the variety itself, because I feel like, it's a variety that has nothing to do with my family history.
Well, you're creating new history, really.
Okay. All right, there you go. I'm creating a new history.
And congratulations on the double gold. That's what you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, we're like award winners here.
I know.
This is like awesome. And
again, incredibly food friendly. Like
really?
you want to enjoy this with something. I don't even feel like it has to be so over the top. I mean, like a pasta.
Well, we're going Italian because Melissa's now getting me also in the mood for Italian.
Yeah.
But yeah, bolognese. I like a bolognese with it personally. And then I don't know what it is. For the past 2 years, I have not had Ossobuco, but I keep thinking about Ossobuco when I think about this wine. And I've got to somehow kill that craving somehow, because I every time I talk about it. So
you need an afternoon to commit.
Listen, I'm the king of food noise.
I need 3 meals worth to commit.
And when you talk about bolognese, I'm actually going to be in Bologna next month, and I'm planning on bolognese for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
That's amazing.
Can't blame you.
So just tell us, Rachel, the price point on the Malbec.
So this one's $32 a bottle, and we have it in stores in the whole DMV area. And I'm actually we're getting lower on our inventory of it. So whatever is out in the wild right now, there probably won't be so much more of it out in the wild because we're not only be able to sell it at the winery. So, but the same thing, we can sell it through our tasting room and online. But yeah, it's $32 a bottle.
And your website is?
Loewvineyards.net.
Leow. Yes.
Great.
Loew.
Loew. Right. Sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, it's okay. It's like the movie theater, not the home improvement store. Yeah.
Or the hotel chain. There's a pretty big hotel chain as well.
Yeah. There's a relation kind of, but we won't get into that.
Okay. So we're kind of winding down on time, but I did want to ask you guys, as you are good friends and you see each other, as time given everything you have to do permits, when the two of you go out, A, who picks the wine that you're going to share, and B, typically, what do you both agree on and want to have a bottle of?
So
Well, that's all. Go ahead.
that's a huge question. So oddly enough, the last couple of times we've actually just come over and cooked. And the last time we hung out, we were both so frazzled and knew that we had plans to do dinner. And so we made the dinner plans, but totally forgot about the wine. Neither of us brought wine. We had completely forgot about it. So I just grabbed a couple of bottles I had in my cellar. But we opened some fun things that night that were I was waiting for someone to share it with. I think
We had a cognac the other day.
Oh, that's true. We did. Yeah, that was tasty.
Oh, nice.
That was good.
Bust out of the neighborhood once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much to both of you. And I know you're in harvest season here. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, most certainly. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. And listen, Melissa, keep us posted on the opening of the spot in Frederick. And
yeah, we'll do.
You may see Sandra and me walk through the door one of these days.
More than welcome. More than welcome.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. We'll talk to you soon. So what'd you think?
Interesting.
Want to go to Maryland?
I would go some crabs and I just get so excited when people are growing things other than Cabernet, Merlot, Chardonnay. It's so exciting. Like Albarino, she said 80% of the people that go to the vineyard have never heard of Albarino.
Yeah, wasn't that an amazing statistic?
I'm not surprised.
Right.
I mean, I know this, but I get excited. That's a wine I get excited to share with people. Like, have you ever had this? No, and everyone loves it.
Well, what perfect timing also, given the fact that you're leaving for
Spain
this weekend. So I think that's fabulous. I wasn't kidding. I knew nothing about Albarino.
Yeah, until you went there.
We went there with the family.
Yeah.
Years ago, and just absolutely fell in love with it, and it became sort of the go-to at every meal. And
now it's more available here in the United States. So all of these varietals, but growing Barbera and Albarino, I love that. The Malbec, and I love her family story of Wolf with her grandfather. I mean, it's just an amazing story. And that he passed away, and she dedicated that to him. That's beautiful.
So thanks for listening. We appreciate it. We hope that you've learned a little bit about Maryland wines today, and that you'll feel as we do that a visit down to Maryland is well worth it. As I said during the episode, I've been to both of their wineries. They're really unique and different, but they're within a few miles of each other. And I can't remember the name of it. I think it's Mount Airy. There's a cute little town in the middle with a couple of nice places where you can grab lunch. In between, absolutely look up Melissa and Rachel. They're wonderful hosts, and I think
and their websites
enjoy their wine. So thanks. We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Please remember to subscribe to Wine Across America on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.